Happy to have you. The next panel is an inspirational panel about global digitization and logistics, and it's only fitting that we have a very global selection of panelists here to discuss this topic. They come from the UK, from Germany, and all the way from India. Please give a warm welcome to this panel, moderated by Sven Postelis of Amazon Web Services. Welcome to the main stage.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to having you. As we already heard, very international round, very diverse round, coming with all different backgrounds. Maybe we start with a very short round of introduction. So Mariella, if you want to maybe start.
Yes,
please.
hi, my name is Mariella, I'm from Bosch, and I'm responsible for a new customer group and new businesses within the automotive space.
So John McFall, pleasure to be here. I look after a practice within Amazon Web Services that specializes in supply chain, transportation, and logistics.
Good morning all. I'm Tyagarajan. I'm from India, so we make fleet management software and has an automation in collecting data as a core as a solutions.
Great, super. So our topic for today, what we try to stress a little bit, is challenges in digitalization in logistics and transportation. But maybe, John, if you review a little bit what you have seen in transportation and logistics for the last 20 plus years, also predicting a little bit the future, what is your observation where we stand as an industry as of now?
It's a great thing to try to sort of predict the future, and I suppose it's fitting that we're talking here about trying to look at the art of the possible at the same time. So at the very start of the IAA conference, we've had many speakers talking about whether we're in growth or decline. And when we look at whether we're in growth, there are conversations around a 40 to maybe 50% increase in transportation logistics requirements over the next 10 years. And if that's true, and we believe that that number is going to continue to grow, then not only are we going to see the obvious increase of trucks on the roads and the other sort of challenges, but what we're also going to see is challenges around the sorts of business models that people are using. So let's take a bit of a look at that, for example. So we have new technology that is being deployed today, and we have an industry that is not, dare I say it, as technologically advanced as maybe it could be. So we have low adoption of some of the solutions that exist. We also have new entrants coming into the market, and these new entrants are trying to disrupt the markets with different ways of thinking. They are deploying technical solutions at speed and pace, which is going to start to challenge some of the existing, more incumbent operators. The other thing that we see changing quite dramatically is customer expectations. So maybe traditionally, the customer was quite happy for you to pick the volume up and move it. But now let's look at a manufacturer who's maybe manufacturing bespoke products. So they're manufacturing bespoke product quantity 1, and the expectation is you, as the LSP, are going to pick it up and you're going to move it to the next stage of the journey. And that's going to cause increasing challenges in terms of commonality of load, the ability to be able to consolidate volume, and the ability to be able to operate. The other thing that's changing, and we see it all over the environment today, even the earlier speaker about carbon mitigation, is the move towards electrification. Our customers are going to increasingly demand that we are as green as we can be. But there's also one problem for that. They don't want to pay for that greenification of the logistics environment. So in an environment where we already have very tight margins, in a growth situation with ever-increasing demands from our customers in terms of more flexibility, more environmental friendliness, increased transparency, increased visibility, we want all of that at a lower cost. The next aspect that we see coming here is that ability to have different business models. And we see a lot of interest in things like the Uber-esque style of operating, which is super exciting, but very hard to implement. One of the biggest challenges, though, is that there is no common operating system across the entire logistics network. So you end up in a situation where someone might be using one particular instance of SAP, another might be using a different instance of a ERP system that they've created themselves, and a whole combination of everything in between. So therefore, even if I wanted to consolidate with other operators, even if I wanted to share volume and loads and to be able to increase truck fill rates, etc., it's quite difficult because at the fundamental level, we are all using different systems and we're not communicating in a common language to be able to do so.
Good. John, I think thanks for the intro, and this is a perfect segue maybe to start a little bit more the discussions. As you said, business models changing, customer expectations changing. In the same way as we get access to new technologies, change always leads to a certain, let's say, another momentum that we're having challenges in this industry, right? And you mentioned, for instance, not willing to pay the cost of all these transportation stuff. So is the rise of the cost of transportation at the moment something in this global economy, something that is concerning your customers, or is it just a fake by the press?
I mean, I'll touch it a little bit, and then maybe we can expand it across the panel. So the other challenge that we have is that when you look at the logistics network, it's very easy for everyone just to see truck and to not really understand that there are many different types of utilization of those vehicles. So for instance, we might be looking at a cargo express parcel operator, CEP, distinct from a logistics service partner. And those two different industries have very different margins. So on the LSP front, very low margin, maybe 1 to 8%. On the carrier front, you may be lucky if you're actually creating any profit. You may, in fact, even be running in the black. And especially if you're operating as an in-fleet or internal fleet for the purpose of manufacturing. When you look at CEP, you see slightly better margins, but even still, you're still looking at somewhere between 1 to 8% margin. So cost will always be a factor in this environment. And unfortunately, whether it be the top of the manufacturing tree or whether it be the end consumer, they're all going to put pressure into the middle, and they're all going to ever increasingly want to see increased cost effectiveness. And that is against the backdrop of green fleets, driver shortages, and other known challenges with things like fuel as it exists today.
Perfect. And you also mentioned changing customer expectations, maybe also society expectations, how transportation should look like. So Mariella, you at Bosch do quite a lot of research and development around sustainability goals and how to meet them and make our transportation ecosystem a little bit more sustainable.
Sure.
Maybe you can share some thoughts.
Yeah, so we're looking, as you can imagine, at the different powertrains that can be the future of the transportation and logistics industry, from electrified trucks with battery electric, but also with hydrogen, as we heard earlier. And so the decision of logistics players on the investments that are behind that is very important. Do I buy now already electrified truck? Do I have charging stations along the way? Do I have to have filling stations on my premise? And what is the outcome of all these investments that we are doing here? So we're investigating in this very much and also offering it as a technology-free approach at the moment, because we have as a society, as an industry, to see which classes, which areas do use which powertrains in the future.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So if I'm listening to you and you're mentioning cost, other challenges hitting the industry, what else do you really see how innovation, like powertrain innovation or even other innovations, could help customers in optimizing their cost position?
Mainly two things. One is innovation in the truck itself to get data out of it in real time. An example of a tire pressure monitoring system or an engine data, ECU data and performance related data. And the second thing is the visibility of that data to a driver or a respective stakeholders in real time, and so that they can make a decision in real time. So that's two things which we have to, what's the challenge that we have to face?
Okay. Another common thread that we read in the press at the moment is driver shortage, right? So even if we would really meet the expected growth of the transportation industry that you mentioned, John, either it's 40 or 50%. We read quite often in the past about the driver shortage. You tell me a lot about digitalization, new powertrains that will need new maintenance efforts. You mean digitalization that needs certain skills to really adopt them for their own advantage. Do we really have in the industry just a driver shortage problem, or is there a picture maybe a little bigger why certain optimizations not hitting the road?
I mean, I can take a bit of a stab at the sort of beyond the driver shortage. So there is the obvious driver shortage, the attracting of new drivers, and dare I say it, also a more diverse range of drivers from different backgrounds to come and participate in this fantastic industry. And that is a systemic problem in certain countries where we have infrastructure that is very poor, and it's very hard to see why you would want to be a driver when you're having to put up with exceptionally poor infrastructure, etc. But step away from the cab, which is also becoming increasingly more complex. You only have to look at some of the modern vehicles that we see that are being designed for the use in urban centres to recognise the sorts of responsibility that a driver of a large vehicle now takes when they drive into an environment that is increasingly, and quite rightly, prioritising pedestrian, cycle and other aspects of safety. So the driver isn't taking more responsibility. But if you step into something like the warehouse of tomorrow, today we have lots of mandrolic processes. We have people that are going around with clipboards, etc., finding out where volume is. Tomorrow we'll have robots. You go into one of the Amazon facilities and you will see ever increasing robotic operations. So the warehouse operator is a fundamentally different person at the very lowest levels and also throughout the management levels. When you look at things like some of the innovative work that we see coming out of our colleagues in Bosch, we see challenges around things like automation around charging. We see managers of fleets having to think differently. So for example, if I've recharged my fleet, which is one particular challenge, maybe I could use that energy to sell back to the grid whenever the fleet is inactive. That's a different type of challenge. If I have or am likely to see autonomous vehicles in the future, it's a new challenge for those that are responsible for safety and operating of humans around autonomous vehicles. So there is a significant shortage, not only in the basic skills that we have, but also in upskilling the entire industry to enable some of this technical adoption that we see coming.
Yeah, and I think if you think about software-defined trucks one day, so there is a digitization coming from the vehicle. There is one maybe also within the logistics industry and companies that have to get more digital. And then there will be also other opportunities that we can enhance the skills more on the digital side and service these skills also. I think, Thiago, in India, you have more to tell here as well.
Yeah, so not only a drivers, even a warehouse operator, a loading person, unloading guys, and even a fleet maintenance persons, tire management people. So all those things, in order to make capturing a data automation, so there is a certain level of skills they needed to adopt or learn new things, and how this RFID works, how this pressure sensor works, and things like that. So those are the things which we need to focus more.
Right. This is maybe another good segue, right? So we spoke about new technologies, autonomous, software-defined vehicles, data. How much of all these imaginations have become reality in the meantime? So maybe, Thierry, if you meet truck drivers all day long, right?
Yeah. So currently there's basic tracking and all maintenance-related things are already digitized to an extent. I mean, say for example, in India they have recently launched national logistics policy. So where they have this unified logistics interface platform. It's similar to what they did it for a payment system. It's called a UPI. So where they can transfer money from one mobile to another. Similarly, like John said, different divisions or the different ministries there. There is an air ministry, aviation industries, there is a road transportation, and then the port and other transportations. All those things are connected via this unified logistics interface platform. It's kind of a protocol communication between all these industries. So which will, I hope, will revolutionize the communication between these different industries. I'm thinking pretty soon it will go in that line.
Okay. You at Bosch have developed a couple of digital services already also that has intent to make the life easier or more secure. Can you maybe share a little bit about what your customers tell you, how complex it is to adopt certain technologies or how to ease to use you have to make them that they get adopted?
Yes, sure. So, for example, we have one solution that is called Bosch Secure Truck Parking. We all know that truck parking lots are really an issue at these times. We have more than a couple of 100,000 parking lots missing in Europe. And we are now offering in the first 100 areas across the Autobahn in Germany, different parking lots that are in a secured gateway, also offering some facilities in some areas. And this is a good start, and you can book this as a driver, as a fleet manager. But the real issue now comes when we want to combine this with route management, with transport management. So now you need to integrate these solutions and put this together. And this is something we see as a really one thing that we have to address in this industry. How can we bring good solutions that are there together and make it more efficient for the fleet managers, fleet operators, drivers in the end, so that we can really have a smooth and more efficient, cost-optimized way to do the job.
That's quite interesting what you just mentioned, because driver, fleets, optimization, ecosystems that exist, brings them all together. What is your observation is the real degree of adoption of digital services along the entire value chain, right? Has been a pretty much siloed approach that we have seen if it even came to digitalization. You mentioned maintenance, you mentioned parking, you mentioned supply chain transparency and visibility. As a provocative question, what really needs to get changed to get there where we all can potentially imagine?
And I think the easiest way to try to imagine digital adoption is to think of it in terms of a spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum, we have nascent operators, and on the other side of the spectrum, we have fully integrated businesses, of which there are exceptionally few. In between that journey, we have this notion of emerging and autonomous. So let me diagnose that, because it's probably easier to talk about pain points. If I'm a nascent customer and I want to use a parking system that is automated, it's quite likely that most of my work is done on Excel. And therefore, I'm having to pull information about which driver on which truck and so forth, how many hours they've worked, etc. And I'm then having to use that data to probably pick up the telephone to tell the driver, okay, you need to go to parking lot 6. If you look at, and that's very frustrating because it's all very rudimentary. In the next area of this maturity model, you have some companies that will accelerate the journey into the cloud. And for those that ask, you're going to the cloud, it's just a matter of when. The whole notion of on-premises, so we're going to the cloud, it's a matter of when. So people shortcut, so they go and buy a whole host of SaaS offerings, software as a service offerings, which is really good. But the problem is now is that instead of having the information just on an Excel spreadsheet, I've got it in 4 or 5 different systems that optimize fuel, fleet management, MRO, driver, safety, etc. But now if I want to use a secure parking lot, I have to access the data from 3 or 4 different systems, download that information into an Excel spreadsheet so that I can make sense of it, then phone Dave to tell him to move, or put it onto a system to update the driver. In the world of automation, what's going to happen is that we know the vessel has arrived late. We know that the truck is picking up the container late, and we know that given the current traffic and weather situation, that the truck is 95% unlikely to make it to its destination. That's really helpful to know. But instead of asking me to make a decision, the decision is already very clear. The truck needs to go to a secure parking location or needs to go to a different destination. And therefore, rather than having to pose the question, we're already given the driver a new route that takes it to the secure parking location for a specified period of time before then moving to the next destination. When we move into that space, it gets very interesting. And if you're interested in that going one stage further, when we talk about integration, now we're also autonomously updating the client's gatehouse PO reconciliation with the vendors, etc. And in that spectrum that I've just outlined, it's quite likely you're going to be in every single one of those areas, depending upon which part of the business we're talking about. And that's also okay, because if we don't start, you're always going to be stuck in the nascent, very frustrating part of the spectrum.
Yeah. Do you see at your customers who try to at least reach a certain level of transparency the same?
Yes, I mean, in India, the payment systems are already revolutionized. So you can it helps to adopt a digitization faster. Say, anyone can use their mobile number, like I said before, they can make a transfer within a minute to any shop, even a roadside shop, they can do it. And on top of it, they are using Facebook and WhatsApp, all those digitization. I mean, in order to accept digitization, they have to use a smartphone, the first step. So they have adopted that very, very fast. So it actually helps to improve their adaptation. I hope they will, new technology will adapt it faster.
Mariela, do you see any value chain discipline, so to say, that adapting the art of the possible at last? So maybe also from the own operations out of Bosch, I don't know, right? So is there something where you say, look, this is a particular area that should gonna better, right? Is it the planning? Is it the execution? Is it the ground fleet management? Is it what is it maybe that comes to your mind?
So we have certain activities ongoing for sure, also for our own logistic processes, but I think the bigger issue is really the digitization, as John said. So the Excel lists, the facsimiles, the emails, the whiteboards that are still used. So we need to, as an industry, really digitize, and then we can make use of more sophisticated and efficient tools in the end that make our lives easier to really process along the value chain.
Yeah.
So I think we have small bits and pieces everywhere, and the collaboration is something that we really need in the space of vehicles, fleet management, and operating the logistics services.
Interesting. So if we speak about own optimization, John, maybe as a broader part of the ecosystem of Amazon, right? We as AWS supporting our colleagues at Amazon quite often. Can you maybe a little bit share what we try to do as an Amazon in that get perceived as a technology company with attached logistics, warehouse, and transport business? What we're doing to exactly meet maybe these expectations and taking a leapfrog here and showing the market how it could look like.
Sure. I mean, it's obviously I can't cover all aspects of it in the time given, but let's just sort of try to keep it nice and high level. So one of the things that Amazon starts at quite a good place. Most of the systems are autonomous where they need to be, and therefore when we talk about optimization, more often than not, we're trying to fine tune an extra 1% or 2% improvement. So if I look at something like our Amazon transportation services, we've done some work there around optimization of tours for vehicles. And what we were finding is that if we're giving notice, say 6-7 weeks notice for the logistics and what the tour is going to be, we were able to improve the tour by 29%, which is a huge increase based on the amount of volume that we move just with ATS alone. Whenever we're given very little notice, so dynamic planning, we were able to improve tour performance by circa 12%, which again, for the business at the scale of Amazon, is a significant improvement. But that gives you a range of how applying artificial intelligence and machine learning to your tour planning and your scheduling can help. Another example is around things like the improvement of scheduling for dynamic gases, industrial gases, etc. You heard the speaker earlier talking about hydrogen. We have worked with businesses that enable us to improve the scheduling of these specialized products. So therefore, what I'm pushing for is that whether you're talking about logistics as service providers moving traditional volumes, or whether you're talking about moving specialist volumes, AI and ML tooling can help improve in that one instance. The next aspect is that sometimes you don't need technology, sometimes it is a process improvement. And in those instances where it's a process improvement, it's about creating the relationships across the entire value chain, where we then seek to support each other to drive improvement through the value chain. And that notion of collaboration is probably one of the most important areas for the business as we go forward, because we want to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. So for instance, how can we help support our carriers who are not Amazon Transportation Services, but maybe an Eddie Stobart's or a JB Hunt's of this world? How can we help support those carriers move towards a climate, climate pledge goals, so that we can mitigate the CO2 emissions? That has to be a team effort. The next aspect in terms of improvement of efficiencies really does start to fall into basic operational improvements. Should I use robotics? Should I not use robotics? Should I be adjusting the flows through my warehouses, etc.? So what I'm getting at is that Amazon leads with science first, and we're always looking for continuous improvement. A 1% improvement is a significant benefit to the business.
Okay, cool. Super interesting. But if you say we lead with science, then maybe let's switching gears a little bit once again, right? So what would be your suggestion? Who should lead a kind of a digital transformation in an organization? Because we mentioned so many buzzwords, and you may be meeting so many people. Why? Who should really drive those kind of programs and make a transportation company from the past a transportation company for the future?
So you're looking at me, Sven, so I assume you want a quick sort of view, and then we go to the two. Quick view is always to look at the points of failure. So where we see transformational change fail is whenever it's being led purely from the technology team. So if you're out there as a CIO of a large transportation organization, I speak directly to you when I tell you just how frustrating it is when you can see the future and you can see the technology, but the business isn't interested. So point of failure is always if it's technologists leading technology. The point of success is whenever it is in the CEO / chief operating officer's immediate interest to make that improvement, then you see a step change in the adoption of the technology. What do you guys?
It starts with technology team, like you said, and it's started by the operational team, because it's kind of a change management in the system. I mean, technology anyone can implement in a software, but as a person, whenever the technology comes, they feel like they've been tracked in their operation. So that means when they see a tracking, they feel it violates their privacy and things like that. So the operational team has to be aligned or enforced to implement that to get it in order to get successful. And other one is customers if the customers need an digitally on how it is tracked. I mean, say in a cold chain, they want material tracking rather than the vehicle itself tracking. Whether my material was transported in a right temperature to an end location like that. If the customer also can take part to enforce this digitization sometimes.
That is a bold move, right? But how can we make the job for those people who are now in charge to drive this transformation simpler?
Yes, so from our view, and that's also the reason why we're sitting here today together across the globe, it's collaboration. So we are really secure that if we do something together and we do the bits and pieces together, we digitize the industry, we bring first improvements like the 1% thinking, we bring it to the driver and to the customer, and we think it backwards from there again. I think that's something that is really driving this industry. No one can solve these issues by themselves, and that's the reason why we put up a logistics operating system. We're trying to bring as many partners, as many customers together to make use of what is already relevant in the market, but also put new ideas on there, improve them, do the 1 or 2% improvements, and see that we have one entrance, one system where we can place all these developments in the future. So everybody can contribute basically, and that will be the success of the future.
Okay, so you're saying all this hard and burden work for the heavy lift and shift and integrate of certain applications is something that will definitely help the industry in accelerating their digital journey. So, John, is that also your observation that have been the kind of projects that have failed in the past most?
I mean, when I look at what has failed, the other thing that we need to reflect upon is that if you're going to make these big, significant changes, you need a partner, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. You need a strategic partner that's going to come with you on that journey. And that's why we have AWS and Amazon, that's why we are partnering with Bosch in this operating system, because we believe in the requirement to help the logistics and transportation industry be more technically advanced and to shortcut some of the other operational challenges that would otherwise exist for many. So in that partnership, we go to market to help drive adoption of the latest technology into businesses, conscious that it's a low margin business, conscious that many of the operators are working with relatively small fleets, and conscious that many of the operators have been burnt by overpromise and underselling of technical solutions. So therefore, by partnering, we hope we bring the right applications to the right point of the market to support that particular business achieve their outcomes, their business outcomes, which for me is one of the main reasons why we're working together.
And
Brilliant.
as we're at the end of the time, you can see more at our booth, at the Bosch booth, and we would like to really discuss with you. Already also today, we have a roundtable organized in the afternoon, so if you want to join us there, be part and discuss together with us how we can do this together.
Super. Collaborations starts with speaking, so join us for further conversations in the afternoon as well, or on the Bosch booth. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quite interesting.
All right.
Good.
Thank you very much for kicking off that discussion and the invitation to collaboration. Very much appreciated. Coming up next, we are talking about combined transport, moving goods together. This is a panel discussion, and it is going to start at 12:15, which is about 13 minutes away. So if you're joining us in the live